Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters and friends, and welcome to the Darwinian Delusions channel. My name is Hamza Andreas Tzortzis, and we're going to be talking about a very serious and very moving topic about the Uyghurs in East Turkestan. And with me, I am honored to be even in the same kind of online space as brother Arslan Hidayat. He is originally from Australia. He's working in Bahrain, and he resides in the beautiful country of Turkey. And I'm going to go straight into it. I want everyone to take this very seriously. I want everyone to take key actions after listening to our beloved brother, because we have to act on the information that's going to come today, that we're going to learn about today. And we have to do it for the sake of Allah, and we have to do it in order to stop the chaos and the corruption and the calamity and the fitna and the oppression that is happening at the moment. So without further ado, brother Arslan, I'm really happy that you're here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family and all the Uyghur people, and remove oppression from them, and grant them victory, and grant them divine justice and divine mercy. And may Allah shower all of the Uyghurs and all of the Ummah and all of the world with his boundless mercy and love. Ameen. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what is your organization Talk to East Turkestan about? And why did you set up?
Walaikum assalam, brother. First of all, I just want to thank you, and it's truly an honor for me to be in the same space as you. So I've been following all your work that you've been doing over the years. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your organization and the work that you guys do. So thank you for that. So Talk to East Turkestan, what we do in Talk to East Turkestan is basically shed light, raise awareness of what is happening to the Uyghur Muslims of Chinese-occupied East Turkestan. But the way that we go about doing it is we have many organizations that talk about the Uyghur issue from a sort of democratic, a sort of Western point of view, but we try and we don't negate that, but we try and give our message. It's more towards a Muslim, Islamic perspective and Muslim audience. So this is what we do, and we give the latest updates of what is happening. There is, like all news, whether it be the Palestinian issue or the Rohingya issue or the Syrian issue, a lot of fake news goes around. So we try and do our best to get our news from confirmed sources. Sometimes, like all organizations, it may not be the case, but we try and do that to the best of our ability, and sharing it through platforms like from our brother Subur on Darwinian Delusions, people like yourself, just trying to get our voices out there.
So I want you to talk to people as if they know nothing about this, okay? So what is happening in East Turkestan? Give me like a summary, and then after we could break it down further. But what is the main issue in East Turkestan with the Uyghur people?
Okay, if it's okay, I'd like to give a very brief history of who the Uyghurs actually are. Okay, so the Uyghurs are a Turkic people. Just like we talk about Turkestan or East Turkestan, it's a broader part of Turkestan. And Turkestan is basically what we know today as countries as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, East Turkestan, Kyrgyzstan. These nations, there seems to be a sort of rattling sound coming through. I don't know if it's from your microphone or...
I don't think it's mine, but carry on. Sorry.
Okay. And so this is the geography that we know as East Turkestan is part of this world. And so the Uyghurs accept Islam in 934 AD. And the Uyghurs are the first Turkic nation. So before the Ottomans, before Ertuğrul, I know the Muslim world loves Ertuğrul and the Seljuks. Even before them, the Uyghurs were the first Turkic nation, and the Turkish word Uyghur or Uygar literally means civilized. And so we are the first Turks to, because the Turks, as you know, are nomadic people. They were the first one to make, to make cities, get into agriculture, and build a civilization. And so a few hundred years of, say, you know, spreading Islam throughout the land, and it's not until we get to about 1760s where the Manchu Empire, you know, we get into contact with them, and they literally annex or take over the region. And for the next 100 years or so, we are annexed by them, and they give us the name Xinjiang, which is what we know today, which literally means new land or new conquered land or new frontier. So the crux, many people think it's a purely Islamic reason, and the Chinese are the enemies of Islam. That's not necessarily the case. The main reason why the Chinese have been doing this, it's not just what's been happening over the 3 years, but the past 70 years, especially with the Chinese Communist Party, it's to get rid of the Uyghurs, because we are the original owners of the land. We did have set up 2 governments in 1933, the East Turkestan Islamic government or Islamic Republic, and in 1944, East Turkestan Republic. So because Islam is part of our identity, you may have heard the banning of Islam fully, whether it be the beard, the hijab, saying assalamu alaikum, praying, wudu, everything, every aspect of Islam totally banned. And so that's one part. So now with the most recent, in the past 2-3 years, we have the Chinese arbitrarily locking up people, locking up millions, the various organizations from the UN up until the US State Department, giving us figures anywhere between 1 to 3 million Uyghur Muslims in these camps. And we have come to now realize it's not just Muslims being put into the camps for practicing Islam. It is people from any sort of background. Some of these people have never prayed a day in their life, and they are locked up simply for being Uyghur. We even have puppet leaders who are Uyghur. We don't vote for them, but they are leaders who have towed or have spread the message of the Chinese Communist Party. Even they are now locked into these camps because of their ethnic background. So these people are locked up. Our language is banned. Our religions are banned. Our clothing is banned. So in every part of our life, public and private. So even in the homes, can Uyghur Muslims practice their culture or their religion at home? No, because you have from the outside 1.1 Chinese officials living with Uyghurs, monitoring every single thing that they do. And this is all over the media. You can just instantly Google this, and it is covered by reputable news sources. So this, in a very brief, this is what's been happening.
Okay, so why is the Chinese government doing this? So from what I understand, you're basically saying that the Chinese government are doing this not necessarily because they hate Islam, but because they understand Islam is part of the kind of social and spiritual DNA of the Uyghur people, and they're just afraid that the Uyghur people are going to become self-governing. They want to basically split away from the Chinese Republic. Are you saying that's the main fear of the government?
Perfect. You perfectly summed it up there. And so the Uyghurs, China proudly talks about its 56 ethnic groups that live within China. But more than 50 of them, besides the Tibetans, even the Mongolians and the Uyghurs, have not necessarily become Hanified or Sinicized. We have not been assimilated into Chinese society. And one of the main things that doesn't assimilate us is our culture. If you were to go to the region, we are very different. Our food, the language, everything, we even physically, we don't look like the Chinese. These things make us very different. And the Chinese Communist Party, one party rule, don't like difference. Another big thing that makes us different is our religion. And so these very things, our clothing, the way we look, even now, this is why now you see forced marriages of Uyghur women to Chinese men. Now, And this is another way to assimilate us, and eventually in a few years, kind of like what happened to, I'm from Australia, so we had something called the White Australia policy and the stolen generation, and white Australians would steal Aboriginal kids, have them be brought up in white Australian families. The Aboriginal natives were married off to white men forced, and so the same policy is being placed in, or being initialized in Chinese occupied East Turkestan. It's the same thing.
So why is the Chinese government taking these type of measures? And I've heard that there are other measures that are being taken place. For example, they're basically creating concentration camps. And if that's true, what are they doing in these concentration camps? So there's two key questions here. Why are they taking these drastic measures? And number two, why are they creating these concentration camps, and what are they doing inside these concentration camps?
So even though technically the region we talk about is Turkestan, or what the Chinese refer to and the world knows as Xinjiang, is part of China today, they really want to cement that region, because even though we are a part of China, there is always this risk of being separated from China, just like Tibet. Just like what's happening in Tibet, there are laws, or there are bills about to be passed in the United States recognizing Taiwan as an independent state, recognizing Tibet as an independent state. So this is a threat. Number two, again, they are trying to make us one with the Chinese people. Why these concentration camps? There are 4 types of camps, depending on how serious or infected you are with Islam. The infected with Islam are the words from the Chinese government themselves. Last year, there were leaked government documents that said the Chinese government themselves, or the regime, see Islam as a tumor or a cancer that needs to be extracted. So that there are 4 types of camps. The camp is like a 9-to-5 job. These are for the most least extreme people. You go there from 9 to 5. You take it's called re-education, and it's about, basically, they teach you communism. They teach you to worship, literally worship the current president or the General Secretary Xi Jinping, and you will see there are images of his face in mosques. You've never seen anything like this. You don't see Netanyahu's face in any of the mosques in Palestine, but you have this, and there are images. It's very well covered. Number two, the second type of camp is those actual concentration camps. According to an expert in this matter, Adrian Zenz, go and check out his work. He's in the United States. He says this is the worst. This is the worst genocide done to an ethno-religious group since the Holocaust. And it's not, this question was asked to me by Mohammed Hijab. He was talking about, what are the numbers? The thing is, we don't have numbers on this issue, because we cannot get film out like you can with the Rohingya Muslims. It's not like they execute these people and we can get footage of this. They actually want to brainwash these people, and through torture, and through the torture, people cannot take the torture and they die. So some of the torture that happens is, and you may think, when you think torture, you think, oh, these people are being beaten constantly. There is beatings, but the torture that I'm talking about is sitting on metal chairs for 15, 16 hours a day. Or you're made to stand for 15, 16 hours a day in a sort of prostrating position, so that that this psychologically also affects you. These people are given pills. These pills stop the women from menstruating. They also stop you thinking, that they turn you into living zombies. These pills also cause you sleep deprivation. So sometimes these women, we were interviewing a camp survivor yesterday, where she's 53 years old, and these women are taken for 24 to 72 hours at a time to be interrogated, and the rape that they go through. And they are given pills every 7 days, and every 10 days their blood is taken. And so a lot of women, according to one camp detainee by the name of Mikrigul Tursun, she was there for 3 months. And in that 3-month period, she, in her own cell, which had 40 to 60 people varying at a time, she witnessed 9 deaths in 3 months. Now, according to Adrian Zenz, there is 1,000 plus cells. There are 1 million to 3 million people in these cells. So you can only kind of guesstimate or imagine the number of deaths that are happening. Now, the only reason why this has been so, the Chinese government are the only sort of regime to be able to keep it under wraps because of the economic power. They have crematorium set up. Even now, people should realize, even now with the CCP virus or the coronavirus, China still says there's only 4,500 or 5,000 deaths. So even that, keeping that under wraps, what we saw the doctors and the nurses and the journalists disappear by keeping that under wraps. So Allah knows how many people have actually died and what these people are going through. We've only got a handful of former camp detainees, survivors that are talking about these issues, and it's really, we're only hitting the tip of the iceberg. And not too long ago, not just a few months ago, but probably our most popular da'i in the world, Dr. Zakir Naik, he himself, you can find this on YouTube, he himself said the worst oppressed Muslims in the world are the Uyghur Muslims of Islam. And I've compared, just so that these things can sink into people's minds, I've compared the dhulm that we go through to the Palestinians. And just like I mentioned, if we, the Uyghurs, went through the oppression, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve the oppression of all the Muslims in the world, but if we had the oppression of the Palestinians, we would say Alhamdulillah, because our brothers and sisters in Palestine can still pray, can still wear hijab, can still fast, and subhanallah, I don't advocate this, but they still have the opportunity to protest. The media is on the ground in Palestine, and if someone becomes a shaheed or is martyred in Palestine, we know their name, we know which school they went to, we know what job they had. But in China, in East Turkestan, no way. This is impossible. This is impossible to know.
Subhanallah, this is beyond belief. This is beyond belief. So what do you think? So there's a few questions here now. You being an activist in this area, what do you think the general Muslim population should do? What do you think Muslim governments should do? And what do you think the international community should do? So there's 3 questions here. Actually, let me give you 4 questions. Number 1, what should the general Muslims do? Number 2, what should influential Muslims do? Number 3, what should Muslim governments do? Number 4, what should the international community do? So there are 4 specific questions there.
Okay, and if I miss out one of the questions, just remind me.
Yeah, sure.
So the Muslims are, I think we need to take a step back and realize what Islam is. We are not a passive religion, and what I'm saying is, I'm not saying like, get out your AKs and go fighting. No. Do what you can in your own capacity to spread the news. We have many Muslims out there that are apolitical. Don't mix Islam with politics, and we have to understand that one of the roles of our Prophet ﷺ was that he was a politician. And so we need to do what we can, talk about it. A lot of the activists, especially our generation, we have the highest populace of Muslims right now in universities, right? Talk to your universities, see if they have links with the Chinese communist regime, and see, especially a lot of these universities that are technological, like MIT, or I don't know what you have in the UK, see if they are directly or indirectly funding or helping do research with the technological advances of the Chinese regime that have played a role in detaining Uyghurs, because there are various apps, there are various camera, there are AI systems that especially MIT were involved. And now, because of the student the rallying and the petitions that were made there, petitions are a huge thing. MIT have now cut ties with the Chinese regime, because they were found to be directly linked with companies that were, China has the most sophisticated, so it is literally a surveillance state. If you were to type into YouTube, surveillance state China Uyghurs, you'd be able to see various documentaries talking about this. So as students, as Muslims, we can really do this. Let's not separate politics from Islam. Like, politics is very much a part of Islam. Number two, I believe you said Muslim leaders. Well, our Muslim leaders need to go back to the Sunnah. Unfortunately, China, you will see, outwardly supports the Palestinian cause. Do not believe this. Wallahi, do not fall for their games. They are the biggest deceivers in the world. That they support the Palestinian cause and yet they are oppressing Muslims. If a Palestinian were to visit East Turkestan, he would be arrested. Because let's just say we have a Palestinian that practices Islam, has a beard. Yeah, because people are being arrested for having beards and practicing Islam. So Palestinians themselves would be arrested simply for that. Where the Zionist government doesn't arrest Palestinians for practicing Islam. I've never heard of this. Maybe I'm wrong. So I would advise the Muslim leaders to follow Islam, and you yourselves would be arrested. For example, Mohammed bin Salman a year ago made various deals, like oil deals, equating in the billions of dollars. Don't do deals with them, because your money is fueling these Muslim concentration camps. There is literally a Uyghur or a Muslim Holocaust happening in the 21st century. The third was, did you say international bodies or international?
Yeah, so the question was the general Muslims, then the influential Muslims amongst the general Muslims, which you missed out. So you talked about the Muslim governments, and then the international community.
Yeah, so a lot of our influential, not all, but I've noticed that many influential Muslim speakers, even they tend to sort of stay away from, or a lot of them, I would say, they don't know how serious it actually is, and they think it's fake news, because China themselves have they use what looks like Muslim speakers or even white speakers to tell the world that there is no oppression going on, and they've invited Muslim journalists and Muslim some speakers to the region, and they've been put on staged tours. You would have seen some stage tours where people go to North Korea and they only see the best version of North Korea. And they'll be shown mosques and people practicing. Those mosques are staged mosques. The people, when they are visited by foreign journalists and Muslims, those Muslims there are all actors praying. They get paid to put on a show, and they have the capacity to do this. But if you look at many other documentaries, if you were to go to visit right now and you were to go on your own, where journalists go there and try to give a perspective, like a true perspective, they are followed the whole time. And instead of making a story about what's really happening, their documentary ends up talking about how they were followed the whole time. If there is nothing going on, okay, if there is nothing going on, how come when people go there, they are followed? How come you don't let people into roam freely and we can't interview people? And how come people like myself, we can't call our loved ones? If these people, because the Chinese say these people are being re-educated, they're going through vocational training, they are being uplifted. People are going, some of these people that I talk about, that are going, professors, people 20, 30, 40 years into their careers, doctors, nurses, people that have retired or on the verge of retirement, people that are actors, like millionaires have gone into, businessmen have gone into these places. People that would employ thousands of people to work haven't gone in. So to say that these people are uneducated or frugal or villagers or, like uplifting the people, these are all lies. People that used to earn the equivalent of 1,000, 2,000 American dollars a month are now, once you've sort of, what they say, graduated from these camps, these re-education camps, you are put into slave labor. And you can literally type in ASPI, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. They have a list of the 80 global conglomerates that are in China that use that use Uyghurs as slaves, and they're paid anywhere between $100 to $300 a month, and they're used as slaves. So there's a Uyghur slave issue right now. There's no point in killing the Uyghurs because you're able to use them. There is this halal organ issue, and you can literally type into YouTube, Google, halal organ harvesting. We talked about this many times, where the organs of the Uyghur Muslims are sold to the highest bidders in the Middle East because they prefer the organs from Muslims. And we know mostly Chinese are not Muslim. So I've kind of gone off into a tangent. I apologize. So that's what I want. So I want, influential Muslim speakers to talk about this because this is real. This is the worst of the worst oppression. And then the international community is strangely the American government. I mean, we know the US government as, sort of bombing the Muslim world back to the Stone Age, but surprisingly and unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of action from them. And it really should put the Muslim world to shame. There are bills being passed, about to be put into law to, sanctioning these Chinese officials that have been directly taking part in the oppression. So this is a huge shame. And the international leaders, many international leaders and organizations, unfortunately, organizations like the UN have been bought by the Chinese regime. And it's unfortunate to see, even now, we've seen with the Chinese virus or the coronavirus, how the World Health Organization is lobbying and promoting what is happening, supporting the Chinese regime in this way. So, yeah, I would say for people to wake up, because this oppression will eventually reach all of us. So, yeah. So basically the international organizations like the UN need to really step up because they haven't been stepping up. They've recently put the Chinese regime on the Human Rights Council, which means that the Chinese regime will now dictate what is a human rights or isn't a human rights violation. So it's a very backward world that we're living in, where organizations like the United Nations are supposed to be stopping atrocities like this. They said never again 75 years ago, but never again is happening again. And people, I think we just need more people power in general to create influence amongst the masses, and therefore affect our governments and put them into action.
Okay, brother, I think there's been a bit of a connection problem.
Yeah.
But so what I gathered here, the main
basically,
thing
I just
is awareness.
Yeah. So basically, I just covered what say international
the connection
organizations
is actually really
should
bad
do.
for some reason. Okay, good. So, obviously, from a kind of holistic perspective, the Muslims should always keep the brothers and sisters all around the world in their du'as, especially the Uyghur, East Turkestan brothers and sisters. So Allah basically removes the oppression of the Chinese government that's upon them at the moment, and that basically Allah makes it easy for them, and that He liberates them, and He spreads, justice and peace, not only in East Turkestan, in the whole of China, but all around the world. So that's very important. We must keep our brothers and sisters in our du'as. And the other thing is it's like you cannot even compare it to maybe other things that are happening around the world. And we need to create this awareness and have this kind of almost mass movement that we're talking about, the injustices and the oppression from from the Chinese regime on our Uyghur brothers and sisters in East Turkestan. So that awareness needs to be constant, and it needs to be repeated. So it creates some kind of social pressure from that point of view. So, the normal Muslim masses and the influential Muslims should be engaging in with that. Also, with the Muslim governments, they should be basically, cutting economics, these kind of international economic contracts with China is.
Yeah, so we sort of lost the connection there, but yeah, we really need to do what we can with the people around that we can, and never lose hope, and try and find avenues, creative avenues. Get in touch with different organizations, with governments. Get in touch with your local MPs, senators. Um, if you're a student, see if you can write a dissertation or a PhD, especially if you're a student that's studying political studies or Chinese studies. See if you can write a dissertation or a paper or a thesis on this issue, and just raise awareness the best way that you can.
Yeah, sorry for that. I don't
Okay.
know why it dropped. I really apologize. Maybe it's the Chinese government hackers. They don't want this to go through.
Probably.
Potentially, because I don't think it's ever dropped before, for me to be honest.
Myself.
But the thing is, look, I mean, what's happening in China? I would even explore the fact that the international community should come together and put some real pressure onto the Chinese government, because I'm just exploring this. I'm not advocating this per se, but I'm exploring it. Surely, according to international law, there's probably legal reason and justification to even put some kind of military pressure to basically put like a military kind of zone over East Turkestan to ensure there is no oppression. I'm not advocating any violence. We're peace-loving human beings. But if there's a legal, moral route that is supported by the international community, then maybe that should happen, because what's happening is unacceptable. What's happening is, it's beyond belief. I mean, you couldn't even imagine what's happening concerning the concentration camps, and the torture and the mass rape that's going on, and the indoctrination, and all of this stuff that's happening in East Turkestan. This is like beyond anything you can imagine. So maybe that could be a route. I mean, I'm not an international legal theorist. I don't know much about these things, but maybe that's something that people should explore. Government should explore. The international community should explore, because we cannot let them get away with this. But you know what? Even if they do get away with this, Allah never forgets. Even if they do get away with this, we have to remember that, all oppressed people, the oppressed brothers and sisters all around the world, at the end of the day, Allah is the king of all kings. Allah is the king of all kings. And the oppressors really are truly cowards. People who are oppressed have existential anguish. They are depressed in this life, and they will be depressed and they will suffer in the life to come after this life. And we have to remember that, when Allah tests a group of people or tests people, it is usually a sign of his divine love. And we know if it's a sign of his divine love, the way we react to the test. Because we know tests are a sign of his divine love, but we would only know depending on how we react. So, this could be a sign of divine love. And, inshallah, our brothers and sisters in East Turkestan and all around the world who are being oppressed, inshallah, they'll go to paradise. And what is Jannah? The Prophet ﷺ said Jannah is a place that if someone suffered an entire lifetime and they were dipped in paradise for a split moment, they will be asked if they ever suffered, and they will say, Wallahi, I've never suffered. By God, I've never suffered. Okay, so I'm paraphrasing the hadith here. And yet, for the oppressors, it's going to be totally the opposite thing. Because what does the oppressor do? They oppress themselves in two ways. Because their oppression is an oppression of their own selves, and they oppress themselves by closing the door to divine guidance and mercy. And when you close the door to the divine guidance and mercy from your own free will, you've closed the door. You have thrown yourself to perpetual punishment, and that's what the oppressor is going to face. So the oppressor faces a form of self-inflicted punishment in the world, because the oppressor is never happy. Cowards never sleep. The oppressor is really oppressing himself, and they could never have a life of any contentment or joy. And they oppress themselves because they've thrown themselves into the hellfire, because they've closed the door. They've actively closed the door to divine guidance and mercy. And that's why they will be the greatest losers. And from the grand cosmic, spiritual, cosmic scheme of things, they are the greatest losers, and they need to take heed, because this life is not forever. They're not going to live forever. Another 5 years, another 10 years, who knows? The point is they're going to meet the king of all kings, and they need to take heed, because they will be destroyed. So what needs to happen is we need to remind ourselves about that, because that gives us a sense of understanding that divine justice will always prevail. But that shouldn't give us an excuse not to do anything, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells us to command the good and forbid the evil. Okay, and Allah says, and they are the successful ones. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. They are the ones who are successful. They command the good and they forbid the evil. So from this perspective, we need to do whatever is within our control to command the good and forbid the evil. Obviously, no one is advocating anything illegal or anything immoral. Obviously not. But we should use all moral, ethical, and legal means to put as much pressure on the Chinese regime and the Chinese government for oppressing our brothers and sisters in East Turkestan. And I call everyone to get involved, even if it means wearing the t-shirts. I've seen some really powerful t-shirts promoting the cause of our Uyghur brothers in East Turkestan. Even when we talk about it in our lectures and our social media. And I think we should do more. And I'm talking about myself as well. I have a platform, and I should definitely do more. And I'm going to make a commitment to do more to raise awareness, brother. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch base with you offline as well to get more information. And maybe you could encourage the viewers that are listening. What can they do right now? What links are available? What books are available? What YouTube clips are available? Give them some tools now, some references, so they can act immediately.
So right now, as you can see, there's my Twitter link there, or my handle, and like 99% of the stuff I share is on the Uyghur issue. Obviously, I do share some stuff like Kashmir and Palestine, but 99% is on the Uyghur issue. Follow our page, Talk to East Turkestan. Again, get your information from there. And there are there's a good news source called Radio Free Asia, the Uyghur service, and you get your news sources from there, because they are able to directly penetrate into the region and talk to officials, and they've translated a lot of the stuff into the English language. And basically and simply Google the word Uyghur, literally Google it, and even just put it into YouTube. Look at all the great documentaries that have been made about the issue, especially from Vice. There are stuff. I mean, there are some news outlets that haven't necessarily been friendly with the Islamic community on the whole, but when it has come to the Uyghur issue, they are talking the truth. This is what I'm saying. It's very interesting how it's come to be. Like basically, the Uyghur Muslim issue has become an allying source for Muslims and atheists and leftists and rightists to come together. This is what's happening, which is very surprising. It has united a lot of different groups. So, yeah, I would say to do this.
So what about putting pressure on extensions of the Chinese government? What do I mean by that? For example, in the UK, there's a Chinese embassy. In America, there's a Chinese embassy or consulate. In other places around the world, in Turkey and other places, there are extensions of the Chinese government from the point of view that they have consulates or embassies or whatever you call it. what kind of activism do you think would you suggest that people do in that context?
Yeah, so organize rallies in front of Chinese embassies when we can. Obviously, there's a lockdown; we can't really go outside. Again, especially in our universities, this is where they use their soft power. So see if they have Confucius institutes. I'm sure they do in the UK, in the United States, in the West, especially in Australia. Especially, and we have a lot of this. So talk about trying to close them down because they are very influential. Any newspapers that you read, they would generally have a section paid for by the communist regime, and they'll put articles by the China's Daily, People's Daily, Global Times, and write to these newspapers, because that's another way that the Chinese regime directly influences British people, American people, Australian people, the people in the West. But these newspapers will never, ever have the opportunity to publish their Western propaganda in Chinese newspapers within China. So it's very strange how things like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube are banned in China, but they are able to, willy-nilly, Chinese officials are able to spread their propaganda to us through those very same platforms and talk about these things. And and boycott Chinese products, just like the BDS movement. Obviously, it'll be very difficult to totally block out, but try your best to block out Chinese products in your life. If you bought 10 Chinese products today, next week buy 9, buy 8, buy 7. Slowly, do your best to because a part of that, a percentage of that, will fund the Chinese machine, its propaganda machine, its concentration camp machine. And we could be directly responsible. 80% of China's cotton comes from East Turkestan. So whenever you do buy, your Chinese, made in China shoes or shirts or shorts, you're buying from that region, and you're funding it. Yeah, do your best.
So, one of the last questions that I have is about your own personal experiences. Are you willing to? What have been your own personal experiences as an Uyghur person? And maybe you could elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah. So what many may know or not know is that my parents-in-law are famous actors and is a famous actor and actress in East Turkestan. My mother-in-law lives with us in Turkey, but my father-in-law, he's a famous actor. He's the equivalent to Jim Carrey. Okay, equivalent to Jim Carrey. Many Uyghurs know him, and he even studied in acting school with the Chinese president's wife back in the mid-80s. He was in a concentration camp for 10 months. And when he got out, and he's been out for like 6-7 months, and we haven't been able to talk to him on the phone, and we can only see him on Chinese TikTok. You've heard of TikTok, but the Chinese version of TikTok is called Douyin. And because he's a famous figure, people, some of his stuff goes online through that way. And when he first came out, he's generally a big man, an obese man, but he was slim. He was, clearly he was in his hair. He had hair like mine, but he was bald when he first came out. Obviously, he's a bit better now. But he's someone that had a heart condition. But my wife, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, they can't contact she can't contact her husband. They can't contact her father. And I'm lucky because I was born and raised in Australia. I'm an Uyghur ethnically myself, but I was, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the reason, they gave me the voice, and able to raise this issue with mainstream media. I was able to, go on the BBC, go on to TRT World, Al Jazeera, and they still quote me on these issues. And I was lucky, but there are many people that have lost their loved ones and that have died, and they still can't get in contact. And I know people that have 90 members of their relatives in the camps, aunts, uncles, cousins, all up. But alhamdulillah, right at the moment, I don't have people in the camps. I had another auntie that was in a camp. She was released, and I'm lucky. But at the same time, there is me talking like this. There is always a risk that they might go back in. But as you mentioned, there is an akhirah, and I want the buck to stop with me or my generation. I don't want my kids to talk about this issue. Hopefully, when my kids grow up, they get to go back to East Turkestan and talk about animal rights or talk about the environment, talk something, trivial like this compared to what's happening here.
So the final question I have, bro, what about any financial support to any kind of robust legal charitable organizations that can give kind of support? I don't know how that can work, because obviously the Chinese communist regime, they have a tight fist on these things. But is there any way that we can basically give some of our sadaqah or charitable donations to organizations that advocate for the rights of the East Turkestan people, for the Uyghur people? Is there anything that we can do from a financial point of view?
Yeah, so you guys can donate to the work that we do. We will put up some links. Also, as I mentioned, the oppression is so bad. Even though the oppression is so bad in Syria and Palestine and all these places, you can still donate money that will reach the people, yes? But for the Uyghurs, no. Your money no way on earth will ever reach the people in East Turkestan. It's totally, because simply donating and them receiving is a crime in itself, and they'll be locked up. But if you want to reach to the people to a certain level, we have around 50,000 Uyghur refugees living in Turkey, and they are in a dire situation. And so we will put up a launch good link for that. There are people raising money for them, inshallah. So yeah, this is what I would suggest.
So the final question I have is, I want you to imagine, and I'm asking this question just so people could also understand the severity of what's going on, because your answer would indicate that. I want you to imagine all of a sudden that you now became just like Erdogan, okay? You were the president or prime minister of Turkey, and you had the question of East Turkestan to deal with. What would be the first three things you would do?
I would first outwardly condemn the Chinese government. He had done that before, but recently he hasn't been doing that because of the economic ties. Turkey has sort of had to link with a superpower because they've broken ties with the United States. I would condemn. Then I would tell businesses to basically not trade with China anymore, or put sanctions, or to raise tariffs or taxes. And number three, I would stop the soft power influences in Turkish universities that are happening, and not to have Chinese speakers or people, Chinese officials, ambassadors, to promote the narrative that the Uyghurs are terrorists, and that this is an essential means to stop the extremism, the so-called extremism that is happening in the region. These are the things. So the media, because they have a lot of access to Turkish media now, there's soft power in universities and trade. Yeah, and openly condemning, because the level of condemnation that he does, and which he rightly does, for the Palestinians, that same or even more condemnation against the Chinese regime.
So, I mean, I didn't want to pick on Erdogan specifically, only because you're living in Turkey, but this goes for anybody who has a leadership position.
Exactly.
The other thing we need to realize as well, look, Allah says in the Quran in Surah Al-Imran, verse 113, they are not the same. People are not the same. Everyone's different. We don't otherize. So this is not an excuse to otherize the Chinese community, because there are many Chinese people that are supporting the causes of the Uyghurs and East Turkestan. We're talking about people who have adopted the kind of disease of the ideology, the kind of communist cancer, if you want to use the terms against them, we're not talking about anyone who happens to be Chinese or happens to be of an ethnic origin from China. We don't support any oppression in that way. When you fight a monster, you should never become the monster. This is what Islam teaches us. don't be don't become the monster in the process of fighting the monster, or trying to challenge the monster. So this is not an excuse to basically point the finger and attack people who happen to be of a Chinese or ethnically Chinese origin. This is about the Chinese regime and the ideologues and activists who are giving platform to this ideological disease that is basically oppressing the Uyghur people in East Turkestan. So, bro, hopefully we could do this again, and maybe with better internet. Inshallah, I think it should be done, because it should be repeated, because repetition is key. Repetition is key. One thing I've learned about this type of stuff, if you keep on repeating things over and over again, people are going to get it. They have to hear the message like 17 times or something, I believe. Yeah. So we're gonna do this again, inshallah. I'm gonna share some of the links that you'll send me on my Facebook and social media as well. And all I have to say, bro, is keep up the great work. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you, and make it easy for all of the Uyghur brothers and sisters in East Turkestan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviate any oppression and any harm that's been inflicted on our brothers and sisters all around the world, and any harm and oppression to all of humanity, our brothers and sisters in humanity as well. But with regards to this specific issue, we pray to Allah sincerely that Allah basically removes the oppression. And what's very important, we need to understand that, individually we may be the weakest link as well, because the Muslims are all connected, and we need to do our best to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to gain his pleasure, and so we can all collectively become eligible for that divine grace and mercy. As Allah says in the Quran, "O you believers, turn back to Allah jami'an," collectively, in order for you to be successful. And part of that turning back is not only turning back our hearts and doing tawbah and repentance, but also commanding the good and forbidding the evil, because Allah says, if you command the good and forbid the evil, you be of the successful ones. So if we want success in this life and the akhirah, let's support our brothers and sisters in East Turkestan. I'm going to, inshallah, do my best to do much more. Also, I'll try and wear the merchandise that promotes the cause of the East Turkestan people. I'll put it on social media. Inshallah, we'll do another interview, and we'll do our best, inshallah. Okay, so let's everyone do their best. Every drop raises the ocean. Yeah, and may Allah bless you, bro. Keep strong. You're in our du'as, and you have our support. You are you are our heroes, because this is a very difficult work. It's easy to go on a platform and talk about some spiritual, theological issue, but this is much, much harder to do. May Allah preserve you, protect you, grant you and the family the best in this life and the akhirah. So without further ado, Jazakallah khair, and just give everybody your final comments, and then we'll close, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan, brother Hamza. As I mentioned before at the beginning of the show, I followed, your work basically from day one, and your brothers and the Aira Foundation. And honestly, for someone of your, I know you're a humble man, and we are technically all equal in the eyes of Allah, and Allah differentiates us based on our taqwa or our piety. And but to be on the same platform, talking with you like this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and for giving us this opportunity. And but it's also an opportunity for you as well to seek more rewards, because I know that you're a person that thinks in this way, someone of taqwa. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and thank you as well. And for all the brothers and sisters that are watching, please just do your bit to spread this message in the best way that you can. Just be the best Muslim to spread this message. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair, bro. May Allah bless you, and I'll speak to you very soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.